Why don't we just start on vaccine supply? We've been readied now for not 1 million a week. It seems there's an issue with actually bottling the vaccine. What do you make of this concern and how it will affect the vaccine rollout overall?
Look, I think it's something they're working on, Tom. You're right, it's the fill and finish, which seems to be the limiter. They can make the batch of vaccine, but it's actually getting it packaged so that it can be distributed. So that's something they're anticipating will improve. They're still talking about moving to 1 million a week over the next few weeks and beyond if they possibly can, given not just Australia needs, but also PNG now and so on. So it is important that we get our local production rolling out because, as we're also hearing, it's even less likely we're going to get those remaining doses for AstraZeneca coming in off the EU, given the constraints they're putting on distribution there.
So with these various factors, look, I know it's a bit of a guessing game, but October is that timeline, which the government has stuck to so far. It'd have to be in peril.
Yeah, look, I think you need to be ambitious. You kind of want to get this rolling out, but you need to be realistic. And I think they are now acknowledging that there is going to be an issue because of that 12-week interval between jabs anyway. Trying to get second doses done before October or the end of October would now seem not possible. But it's certainly an ambition still to try and get there for the first jab. And if we can get those most exposed, most vulnerable covered with their first jab before we get into the depths of winter, July, August, then that's really critical for those individuals, but also for all of us as well. So hopefully we are on target to still meet that rollout. We'll start to move to not just the GPs. We've got 1,000 signed up. They've now had over 4,000 who've actually expressed an interest, so we might actually get a lot more distribution through the GPs than was planned, but also the state vaccination centres and respiratory clinics. So with all those ramping up operation progressively, we could in fact be moving a lot of vaccine. This next week, we're actually pushing out 400,000 to GPs, 50,000 to the respiratory clinics. So we're talking about 500,000 now, and that hopefully will, as we settle in and people start to know they can make their bookings in advance, GPs know they've got the supply and they know they've got the patients booked in, then I think that's when we'll get a better sense of what the progress looks like and what those time targets might look like,
right,
with a bit more accuracy.
Yeah, that's the real test of the capability of the system, I guess. Just wanted to ask about Papua New Guinea. So we've sent over 8,000 doses for frontline health workers. Evidence and Senate estimates today, they have about 30,000 frontline health workers. We still have vaccines we haven't been able to use. We're not going fast enough. That seems like a tiny amount. If we gave them another 22,000, at least there'd be protection for their frontline health workers. If they get sick, that crisis is exacerbated. Would you like to see that?
Yeah, look, I do think, this isn't just about donating money or donating vaccine. It's actually also about the rollout of the vaccine. And it's important, absolutely important, as you say, Tom, to protect your frontline workers, or else they won't be in a position to manage the health consequences of infection, let alone be involved in the prevention campaign. So we have actually sent people as well as vaccines over to try and facilitate this. But yeah, I think, that assessment must be made on the ground. And if they're coming back and saying we need more vaccine, then hopefully our government will be looking at that.
Yeah, you'd hope that's not the choke point, if you like. Since we last spoke, more reassurances over the AstraZeneca vaccine from more testing results in Europe and so on. This is going to happen again, I guess. Headlines about death after people have the vaccine but not connected to the vaccine. Do we need to keep our heads, and we meaning the Australian people, but the media as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Because people, we know from our past history what kinds of numbers of deaths we're going to see this year and what will be the main causes of death. And if those patterns don't change, it doesn't mean that, someone who had a vaccine and who might die or get very sick in the week or two after is in any way related to the vaccine. It might be. So we're doing incredibly cautious kind of monitoring of potential side effects. Everyone waits 15 minutes after their vaccination to make sure they're not having an immediate reaction, longer if they've got any kind of allergy history. And so we're trying to get the balance right between not worrying people, but actually being really fastidious about that safety checking. But yeah, we will have people who are unwell. We will monitor that and make sure it doesn't signal any problems. but we've had over 20 million shots of AstraZeneca now around the world. That's big enough to see these very rare events, which did trigger the EU concerns around that clotting. It looks like it's
Yeah.
almost a 1 in a million episode, but we've now had sufficient vaccinations that we pick those up. So we need to understand those. We need to monitor for them. But that's one person in Australia. You know, that's not going to be a problem for the
Yeah.
vast majority of us getting a vaccine.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and it's bigger than any study, isn't it? The real world rollout. Just finally, so hearing now about a Papua New Guinea strain, again, this is going to be a normal, we'll hear about strains. We have capability to make AstraZeneca, we can't make mRNA vaccines, and they can adjust to strains much quicker, such as Pfizer and Moderna. Should we be updating our capability? How much would that cost? I don't know if you're aware or not, or how long would that take for us to do that?
Yeah, it's a big thing. It's a completely different type of vaccine development and production. You're right, it can be adapted pretty quickly. Fortunately, most of the variants are still covered by AstraZeneca, but yes, if we reach a point like with the South African strain we're worried about, where you do need to modify, refine your vaccine, then having local capacity to produce mRNA vaccines as well is something the government has looked at. So absolutely, it's a whole new technology. It would need new facilities. It's a long-term project. You're talking years, but with what we're seeing now, we realise how important it is. If you're going to do that, you have to start now to be ready in a few years' time.
Right, and maybe not this pandemic, but the next one. Catherine Bennett, appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
Thanks, Tom.